Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Leadership Sucks. And if you're hearing that title for the first time, yes, I mean it. Leadership does suck sometimes. You know, it's hard for the people doing the leading, and depending on the leader, it can really suck for those being led. And that's exactly why I wanted to bring back the podcast because leadership is one of those things we talk about like it should be simple. Communicate clearly, hold people accountable, build trust, delegate, develop your people, think strategically, stay calm under pressure, make good decisions. Easy, right? Except that when we actually have to do it, and suddenly you discover that leadership involves people. And frankly, people are messy. We have emotions, assumptions, fears, expectations, good days, bad days, competing priorities, and apparently completely different interpretations of the phrase, "Can you get this to me by Friday?" Folks, that's leadership. You can spend 20 minutes carefully crafting what you believe is the clearest email you've ever written in your life. You read it twice. You remove anything that might be confusing. You bold the action item. You put the deadline in the first paragraph. Bottom line up front, remember? You put it again in the last paragraph, restate the outcome, and you hit send. 10 minutes later, one person thinks it's urgent, another thinks it's optional, someone else replies all with a question you answered in paragraph two, one person schedules a meeting to talk about the email, and the one person you absolutely needed to read it asks you 3 days later, "Hey, did you send me something?" Welcome to leadership. And that is really the spirit of this podcast. I want to talk about things leaders actually deal with every day, not just leadership theory, not just the polished version of leadership that looks great on LinkedIn. I want to talk about what happens when your patience is gone, when people don't do what you expected, when you feel overloaded, when somebody challenges you, when you know what the right leadership behavior is, but you still do the exact opposite. I also want to introduce the competencies and behaviors that effective leaders need to develop if they actually want to lead better. Because you see, leadership is learned. We're not born leaders, but we are developed leaders. But only if we're willing to be honest about where we are struggling. So, the goal of Leadership Sucks is pretty simple. Leadership may always be difficult, but it doesn't have to remain confusing. And hopefully, together, we can make leadership suck a little less. You see, one of the things I've learned over the years is that when leadership becomes frustrating, we naturally look outward. Why won't they listen? Why don't they take ownership of this? Why can't they just simply communicate? Why does everything always come back to me? Why do I have to tell them this again and again and again? And sometimes these statements are absolutely legitimate. But there's another question that effective leaders eventually have to learn to ask. Where am I contributing to this? That's the harder question because it requires us to consider the possibility that leadership problems may not entirely be out there. Some of it may be right here in us. And I don't mean that as some kind of leadership guilt trip. I mean something more, much more practical. You see, every one of us operates from a set of beliefs, assumptions, habits, priorities, experiences, and emotional patterns. They influence how we interrupt, how we interpret, what's going on around us. They influence the decisions we make. They influence how we respond to people, and they become especially visible when the pressure goes up. See, you can learn every communication model ever invented. But if you believe that disagreement is disrespect, then you're probably going to become defensive when somebody challenges you. You can attend a class on delegation, but if somewhere inside you, you believe nobody can do this as well as I can, you're still going to hold on to everything. You can tell your team you want honesty, but if your identity depends on being the smartest person in the room, the first person who'll give you honest feedback may have a very unpleasant afternoon. I've been on the receiving end of that a couple times. So we know what we're supposed to do. The problem is that knowing and doing are not always the same thing. And that is where I want to start this very session. Before we talk about leading everyone else, I want to talk about how we operate ourselves. Okay? We're going to discuss what we call a personal operating system. Think about your phone or your computer. Underneath all of those apps and programs is an operating system. The operating system determines how information gets processed, what resources are allocated, what programs are running at any given time, and what happens when the system gets overloaded. And sometimes what happens when everything freezes and you just stare at the screen wondering, what the hell happened? You see, leaders have an operating system too. And I call it your personal operating system. The question isn't whether you have one, because you do. The question is whether you intentionally designed it, or whether it was assembled over time from your childhood, your experiences, your successes, your failures, your old bosses, your fears, your habits, and that one performance review back in 1997 that you apparently still haven't gotten over. A lot of us are trying to lead modern organizations using operating systems that have never been updated. And when we wonder why, we keep getting the same results. You see, your personal operating system influences how you show up. It influences what you pay attention to, how you make decisions, how you treat the people around you, how you react to challenges, how you respond when things go wrong, and how do you spend your time? But most importantly, who shows up when the pressure rises? You see, anybody can look like a great leader when everything's going well, but pressure reveals your operating system. So here's the definition I want you to think about. Your personal operating system is the internal framework that determines what guides you, who you are becoming, where you're going, what you repeatedly do, and how you protect and invest your time and energy. Now, here at Azimuth, we organize this into a model called BIGHT, B-I-G-H-T. BIGHT stands for beliefs. The I stands for identity. The G is goals. H is habits. And the T is time and energy management. So let's walk through each one of these. The first one, B, beliefs. Your beliefs include your values, your purpose, and the assumptions you carry about people and leadership. So what do you actually believe? Not what's written on your company website or what's hanging on the wall. What do you believe when things become difficult? Do you believe people can be trusted? Do you believe mistakes are opportunities to learn or evidence that somebody is incompetent? Do you believe leadership means having all the answers? Do you believe asking for help makes you look weak? Do you believe conflict is healthy, or do you believe it's something to avoid? These beliefs shape behavior, whether you are conscious of it or not. And a leader can say, I believe in empowering my team. But the same leader also believes if this goes badly, it's going to make me look bad. So guess what happens? Micromanagement. You see, we have competing beliefs, and pressure usually reveals which belief is stronger. So, one of the first responsibilities we have as leaders is becoming aware of the beliefs driving our behavior. Because if you don't define what guides you, the loudest person, the biggest crisis, or the strongest emotion will do it for you. So, B is beliefs. The next one, I, identity. Who are you as a leader? And maybe more importantly, who are you trying to become? You see, identity matters because we tend to behave in ways that protect how we see ourselves. If my identity is I'm the person with the answers, then admitting that I don't know something now becomes threatening. If my identity is I am the strongest leader, then vulnerability may feel dangerous. If my identity is I am the one everybody depends on, then I'm unconsciously creating dependence. Sometimes the thing we complain about are actually reinforcing our identity. Let's think about that. I have to do everything around here. Okay. But are you the one who keeps jumping in and doing everything? Or my team can't make decisions without me. All right. But what happens every time they try? Do you override them, correct them, redo their work? Identity drives behavior. So a powerful leadership question is this: what kind of leader do I want people to experience? Not what title do I have, not what authority I possess. What do people experience when they interact with me? Do they experience calm, clarity, trust, fear, inconsistency, defensiveness? That experience is part of your leadership identity. So, talked about beliefs, talked about identity. Let's go to the next one. G, our goals. Where are you going? What are you trying to accomplish? Goals sound obvious, but leaders often confuse activity with progress. We can be unbelievably busy without being particularly effective. I think we've probably all felt that. Meetings, emails, phone calls, reports, messages, notifications. And then you get to Friday and think, what exactly did I accomplish this week? Where did all the time go? You see, your goals give direction to your operating system. They help answer what matters most, what deserves my attention, what can wait, what should we say no to? And goals should connect back to your beliefs and identity. Because if your goals pull you away from the person you say you want to become, then something's wrong. If one of your core values is family, but every professional goal requires sacrificing your family indefinitely, there's a conflict in the operating system. If you say developing people matters, but your only goals reward short-term output, development will always get pushed aside. So goals help translate intention into direction. Without them, urgent becomes your default priority. So that's G. Let's go to H, your habits. Now, this may be where leadership gets real because your team doesn't experience your intention. They experience your habits. You may intend to listen, but if you interrupt everyone, they experience interruption. You may intend to empower people, but if you repeatedly take over, they experience control. You may intend to create psychological safety, but if you become visibly irritated when somebody disagrees with you, then people learn very quickly what's actually safe. You see, habits are where leadership philosophy becomes behavior. And habits are particularly important because they operate automatically. Under stress, we don't usually rise to our highest aspirations. We tend to fall back onto what's familiar. So that's why self awareness really matters. What do you repeatedly do when you're tired? When are you challenged? When you feel disrespected? When you're overloaded, do you withdraw? Do you take control? Do you become impatient? Do you avoid conflict? Do you tend to over explain? Start solving everybody's problems. You see, your habits are running whether you pay attention to them or not. It's like all those processes operating in the backside of your operating system on your computer. There's something going on whether you see it or not. And if your habits are inconsistent with the leader you want to become, eventually your habits will win. And finally, the T. T is time and energy management. This is about protecting both of those, time and energy, because leaders don't just run out of hours, they run out of mental capacity, emotional capacity, attention, patience, decision making ability. You can technically have 30 minutes free on your calendar and still have absolutely nothing left to give. So, part of your personal operating system has to address the question: what deserves access to my time and energy? That is the leadership question. Where does your best energy go? To strategic priorities, to your people, to your family, to your health? Or does your best energy go to email, notifications, low value meetings, and other people's emergency? This is a line I want leaders to think about. Listen very carefully. Your calendar may be a more honest reflection of your priorities than your value statement. Let me say that again. Your calendar may be a more honest reflection of your priorities than your value statement. You know, we love saying things like this: people are our greatest asset. Great. Show me your calendar. How much time is protected for your people? Or we may say, strategic thinking is important. Great. Where's the time set aside on your calendar for thinking? Or my family is my priority. I hear this all the time. I've used it. What energy do they actually receive? Is it your best or whatever's left over at the end of the day? So your time and energy reveal your priorities. And one of the most dangerous leadership myths is that being constantly available equals being committed. It doesn't. Sometimes being constantly available means you've created zero boundaries. And no boundaries eventually creates exhaustion. Exhaustion creates impatience. Impatience affects judgment. And judgment affects relationships. And suddenly, a time management problem becomes a leadership problem. Being busy is not proof that you're leading well. Sometimes it's actually evidence that your operating system has no boundaries. So let's talk about something real quick. When an operating system, and if you've been around computers long enough, you'll get a system error. Okay, so let's introduce the system error and how we're going to do this occasionally on this podcast. A system error is one of those leadership behaviors that tell us something in the operating system may need an update. So here's today's system error. Calendar hypocrisy. You say developing people matters, but every coaching conversation gets moved. You say strategy is important, but you have no time blocked to think. You say family comes first, but your family gets whatever energy is left over at the end of the day. You say you want to delegate, but you never create enough space to teach somebody else how to do the work. That is a system error. So we don't protect our time by somehow finding more of it. We protect it by deciding what deserves access to it, because you're never going to find more time. It's a non-renewable resource. So let's put the bite together. We have the 5 components, and they don't operate independently. They influence one another. Your belief shapes your identity. Your identity influences your goals. Your goals require habits. Your habits determine how you spend your time and energy. And how you spend your time and energy reinforces everything else. Think about a leader whose core belief is a good leader is always available. That belief may create an identity. I am the person. I love using I am statements. So I am the person everybody can count on. That identity creates goals. I need to solve problems quickly. Those goals create habits. Respond immediately. Jump into everything. Take over when people struggle. And those habits consume time and energy. Eventually, the leader is just exhausted and frustrated and starts saying, why can't anybody solve these problems without me? Well, because the operating system may have helped create exactly the environment that you're living in. That's why the work must start on the inside. So I want to give you something practical to work on. Think about one leadership moment that didn't go well. Maybe you got frustrated. Maybe somebody challenged you. Maybe you reacted badly. Maybe you avoided a conversation you knew you needed to have. Or maybe you spent a whole week putting out fires and accomplished absolutely nothing you intended to accomplish. Take that moment and run it through the bite model. Ask yourself, beliefs. What belief was driving me? Identity. Who was I trying to be, prove, or protect? Goals. What outcome was I actually pursuing? Habits. What automatic behavior did I repeat during this process? And finally, time. How did the way I used or protected my time and energy contribute to what happened? Okay? Here's an example. Let's say somebody on your team challenges one of your decisions during a meeting, and you immediately become defensive. Let's run it through the bite. What belief was operating? Maybe a leader should be certain. That's the belief. What identity? I need to be the smartest person in the room. What goal? Instead of finding the best answer, your real goal suddenly became defending your credibility. What habit? Become defensive. What about time and energy? Maybe you walked into the meeting already exhausted, overscheduled, and with every little bit of patience left. Now, suddenly the employee's question is not the entire problem. Your operating system was interrupting the question through all of these filters. That is where leadership development gets interesting, because now we have something you can actually work on. So, how are we going to make it suck less? Right? One practical thing you can do immediately. This week, don't try to redesign your entire life. That's not what we're trying here. Just notice your operating system. Pick one moment when you feel frustrated, defensive, overwhelmed, impatient, and before you blame the person standing in front of you, ask, what is happening inside my operating system right now? What belief is showing up? What identity am I protecting? What am I trying to accomplish? What habit just kicked in? And what is happening with my time and energy? See, awareness doesn't instantly solve the problem, but it does give you a choice. And that is a huge part of leadership. Creating enough space between what happens and how you respond that you can choose who you want to be. So over the next few episodes, we're going to break the whole bite model apart. We're going to go back and talk about beliefs, identity, goals, habits, and time and energy management. We'll look at each of these effects and how they affect the way you lead. What happens when you're healthy? What happens when you're not? And how you intentionally build your personal operating system that supports the kind of leader you actually want to become. Because here's the big idea: effective leadership doesn't start with managing everyone else, it starts with learning how to manage yourself, your beliefs, your reactions, your priorities, your habits, your attention, your time, your energy. That doesn't mean leadership suddenly becomes easy. People still misunderstand your emails, meetings still get occasionally pointless. Someone will still reply all when they with absolutely no reason to reply all. Leadership is still going to suck sometimes. But when you understand how you operate, you become much less likely to let pressure decide what kind of leader shows up. So before the next episode, identify one leadership moment that didn't go the way you wanted. And don't and don't begin with what's wrong with them. Start with what is my operating system doing? That one question may tell you a lot. I'm Larry Moss, and this is Leadership Sucks. Together, let's make it suck less. God bless. We'll see you next time.